I'm sure most of you are familiar with this trend that's been going around YouTube for the past couple of months known as iceberg charts. Basically, an iceberg is just a sort of flow chart that ranks information based on how well known it is. So, like, the stuff at the tip of the iceberg or above the surface is common knowledge usually, and the deeper you go, the more obscure things start to get. I started seeing these sorts of videos pop up here and there a couple months ago, but now they're everywhere. I can hardly go a day without seeing one of them in my recommended section. And as with most other YouTube trends, there is now an iceberg chart for everything, ranging from the highly educational, like lost locations or true crime, to the highly ridiculous, like, well, that. The more I saw, the more I began to think, these iceberg charts could really be put in their own iceberg chart. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. I created an iceberg chart of my own, and I just filled it with titles that I came across while doing my research. And by research, I mean that very loosely. Basically, all I did was type iceberg into my YouTube search bar and just took from the ones that I could find from there. So keep your expectations realistic. Tier 1, or as I like to call it, the common topics, is pretty much just the basic stuff that people would usually look to these kinds of videos for. These types of subjects can usually hold the average person's attention regardless of how familiar they are with the format. Stuff like disturbing movies, or unsolved crime, or conspiracy theories, or serial killers. And especially the deep web. That always seems to be a popular one, because everybody's super interested in the mystique of the deep web, even though the majority of it is just stuff like pirated music, medical records, and cocaine. Tier 2 is reserved for the more obscure topics, which are still pretty accessible to the general public, but require a certain amount of prior knowledge to fully appreciate. For those that may not be as familiar, I'll just give a brief summary. Creepypasta is a website for the online sharing of horror stories and urban legends, which have been copied and pasted around the internet. The most famous of which include the likes of Slender Man, Jeff the Killer, and the Russian Sleep Experiment. SCP, or Secure, Contain, and Protect, is a web-based collaborative fiction project that details an alleged government organization that protects the public from various anomalous creatures and entities. Just think of it as like a fictional alien jail. That's a pretty terrible description, honestly, but if I was to fully describe to you the SCP Foundation, we would be here all day, so look it up. The internet rabbit hole is pretty self-explanatory. If you spend enough time on the internet, you're eventually gonna find some weird things as you go. Lost content refers to any number of videos, music, or written text that is either alleged to have existed or has been lost by time for any number of reasons, which can also kind of go down the urban legend path as well. The same can pretty much be said for banned video games. Finally, the universe may seem a bit out of place in this tier, but you're gonna have to know a lot of science and higher math if you're really gonna dig deep into the secrets of the universe, so just approach at your own discretion. Tier 3 is reserved for the existential topics, the things that can cause you to question the fabric of your own reality, or at least that of human nature. Of course, you're going to get this sort of thing anytime you talk about doomsday predictions, and thankfully, all the ones that have already passed have proven to be false. But like it or not, a doomsday of sorts is inevitable for humankind. The only question is, when will it happen? And will anyone have predicted it? And has anyone already predicted it? The religion and cult iceberg begins innocently enough, detailing various large world religions. As it goes on, it begins to get a little bit more strange, delving into the more out there beliefs such as Scientology and the Nation of Islam, which transitions into a number of well-known cults such as the Manson family and Jonestown. But then as we get deeper into the more obscure cults, we come across the more nightmare-inducing, bone-chilling, real-life stories of the Anthill Kids and Marcus Wesson. with crimes so reprehensible you'll scarcely believe that it was all real. For the more religious people out there, the Bible theory iceberg can get a little heavy, which details such topics as the hierarchy of angels, God's true name, the truth behind the Trinity, giants, and even biblical dinosaurs, if you can believe it. Important historical dates also seems harmless enough at first, but again, the deeper down you go, the more you'll start to see of eerie coincidences, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, and even paranormal activity. Now, with YouTube criminals, everybody's familiar with all the high-profile cases, such as Austin Jones or EDP-445 or Elliot Rodger. But surprisingly, YouTube has provided us with a lot more mass murderers and serial killers than I ever could have imagined before watching that video. Really makes you wonder how many of our favorite content creators are secretly evil. And lost locations. You've got your Atlantis, your 7 Wonders of the Ancient World, your Library of Alexandria, as well as your entrance to the Hollow Earth, which is an otherworldly Shangri-La paradise theorized to be located underneath either Mount Everest or Antarctica. Now we know where all those dinosaurs and giants went. In Tier 4, we start to see a bit of a deviation from the direction we've been going. From here on out, everything is fictional, consisting wholly of fan theories and world building. And while I did title this tier Dense Topics, you're definitely going to recognize a lot of these, like Disney or Pixar or Cartoon Network, all of which are platforms with extensive back catalogs. When you think of fictional universes with significant amounts of lore, probably the first thing that comes to your mind is Star Wars. Thanks in large part to their pantheon of films, TV shows, spin-offs, and the fact that every character, major or minor, has their own entire Wikipedia page. The same can be said for Batman, and really all superhero-related media, but especially Batman, which contains a seemingly infinite amount of character arcs, timelines, villains, and source material. Nickelodeon's interesting because of their penchant for shady activity, ranging from their supposed subliminal messaging in some of their shows, all the way to Dan Schneider's well-documented pedophilic foot fetish.
Have you ever tried to get your whole big toe in your mouth? Check this out!
And canceled movies. Whether due to financial reasons or production disasters, there's a whole ocean of proposed movies that never ended up seeing the light of day. The most infamous of these has gotta be Superman Lives, in which Nicolas Cage was cast to play Superman while looking like this. Truly a tragedy. In Tier 5, we move on from dense topics to complex topics. These fictional works take it even further and contain so much information that you could realistically devote your entire life to them and you still wouldn't uncover everything there is to know. Beginning, of course, with Super Smash Bros., the popular fighting game containing many of Nintendo's most popular characters. It is the inspiration behind the world's longest fanfiction, known as the Subspace Emissaries World's Conquest. At over 4 million words long, it is debatably the longest literary work in recorded human history. Controversial internet art refers to anything from Rule 34 to hentai to furry stuff. So that's a rabbit hole I really don't want to get into. As simple of a premise as it may be, the whole objective of Minecraft is that it realistically contains infinite possibilities for the players. It is a complex topic of the utmost degree. Now, Harry Potter could have gone in the previous tier, but considering how much fan fiction exists and how many entire websites are devoted to it, I think it's safe to say that Harry Potter entails more than your average workload. Pokemon is a multifaceted, multimedia animated series originating in Japan in 1996, and is to date the world's most successful media franchise of all time. Need I say more? There was a period when Five Nights at Freddy's took over YouTube like nothing before or since. So much so that it probably had a much larger cultural impact on Generation Z than most sociologists would tell you. And a lot of the same things I said about Harry Potter could also apply to Doctor Who, except this time instead of wizards and magic, it's time travel and aliens. On to the final tier. Tier 6, the truly upsetting. The foul and unspeakable. Cursed, if you feel so inclined. Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Apparently Greg was a homosexual sociopath the entire time. And Manny is now a hate symbol. I knew there was something off about that Squidward guy. He's way too relatably written to be up to any good. Many have tried and many have failed to theorize whether or not Family Guy is a good show. Fun fact, I recently went and ordered a Travis Scott burger with a side of Szechuan sauce, and the cashier threatened to murder my entire family. Oh, you thought Star Wars was complicated. Well, what about Lego Star Wars? The Office, or as I like to call it, government mind control propaganda, brainwashing us to pursue lifeless, thankless, unfulfilling white-collar work that keeps the capitalist machine moving. Sadly, our nation's Caucasian female population has already been assimilated. Get out of my head!